They call us void navigators, a fancy title for those of us who thread the needle's eye between stars. We navigate the void, the nothing, the between, the goddamn emptiness. It's not a place for the faint of heart or the weak of mind. I've seen things out there, in that desolate expanse, things that would curdle the blood of those corporate suits safe in their sterile offices, things that make you question reality, question sanity, question whether the void is just empty space or something more. But that's the job, isn't it? To ask the questions nobody else wants to ask, to see the things nobody else wants to see, to go where nobody else wants to go and maybe come back in one piece. My name is Atlas Harrow, and this has been my life for 2 decades. Jumping through the void, staring into that abyss, and questioning my own sanity has become routine. All while hauling cargo between desolate rocks for a corporation that values profit over its pilots' well-being. They call us essential personnel, the lifeline of interstellar commerce. Empty words, just like the void itself. They don't see what we see, they don't feel what we feel. That emptiness that seeps into your bones. The chilling awareness of your own insignificance in the face of the cosmic void. They don't know what it's like to be truly alone, surrounded by a nothingness so profound it threatens to swallow you whole. I checked the chronometer. 1400 hours, standard ship time. Another jump scheduled for 1800. 4 hours to kill. 4 hours to let the anticipation fester. To let the memories surface. The faces of lost colleagues, the strange occurrences I've logged in my P-log, the fleeting glimpses of something out there in the black. I run a diagnostic on the terminus, my ship, my coffin, my only companion in this godforsaken profession. She's a good ship, for all her quirks. A Constellation-class freighter modified for long-range void navigation. Not the newest model, but she's reliable. Mostly. She's seen her share of jumps, taken a few knocks, but she always gets me where I need to go. I've personalized the cockpit over the years, adding little touches here and there, anything to make it feel less like a corporate-issued tomb. A worn leather grip on the control stick, a faded photo of a sunset over a long dead Earth ocean, a few scratches on the bulkhead from a rough encounter with a gravity well. Reminders that I'm still human, still alive, still kicking, despite the best efforts of the void to prove otherwise. The nav computer pings, displaying the coordinates for the next jump. A routine cargo run to Haven's Rest, a privately owned fueling station on the edge of charted space. Independent, that's what they call themselves, free from the corporation's grip. For now. I've been there before, a desolate rock, barely habitable, but it's a welcome sight after weeks in the void. A place to stretch your legs, grab a drink, swap stories with other pilots. A brief respite from the crushing loneliness. A chance to pretend you're still part of the human race. To forget for a few hours the vast emptiness that surrounds you, the feeling of being watched by something unseen. The terminus lurches slightly, a gentle reminder that even in the void, there's no such thing as perfect stillness. Gravitational eddies, pockets of warped space-time, the influence of distant celestial bodies. They all conspire to keep you on your toes. You learn to feel the ship, to anticipate its movements, to become one with the machine. It's a dance, a delicate balancing act, and one wrong step can send you spiraling into oblivion. You develop an instinct, a sixth sense for navigating the void. It's not something you can learn from a textbook or a simulator. It's something that's earned through experience, through trial and error, through countless hours spent staring into the black, wondering what's staring back. And sometimes you catch a glimpse of something, a fleeting anomaly on the sensors, a distortion in the fabric of space-time, a flash of something that shouldn't be there. I activate the comm system, patching into the ship's external sensors. Run a level 3 diagnostic on the long-range array, I command, my voice echoing slightly in the confined space of the cockpit. The basic AI running the terminus is a far cry from the sentient constructs of science fiction. It's more of a sophisticated algorithm, designed to handle routine tasks and provide assistance when needed. Affirmative, Captain Harrow. The AI replies. Running diagnostic now. Estimated completion time, 3 minutes, 42 seconds. While the diagnostic runs, I pull up my P-log, a personal journal where I record my experiences, observations, and any anomalies encountered during my jumps. It's a habit I developed early in my career, a way to maintain a sense of order in the chaos of the void, a way to document the strange occurrences that defy explanation, a way to prove to myself that I'm not going mad. The corporation discourages personal logs, of course. They prefer their pilots to be unthinking, unfeeling cogs in the machine. But I've always been a bit of a rebel, a bit of a questioner, and the void has a way of making you question everything. I scroll through the entries, each one a snapshot of a moment in time, a fragment of memory, a piece of the puzzle that is the void. An entry from 3 months ago catches my eye. Unidentified energy signature detected during jump to Hades system. Duration 1.7 seconds. Origin unknown, nature unknown. No discernible effect on ship or crew. Possible spatial distortion. Below the entry, I've attached a data file containing the raw sensor readings. A series of numbers and graphs that mean nothing to the untrained eye. But to me, they tell a story. A story of something strange, something inexplicable. Something that doesn't belong in the neat, orderly universe the corporation wants us to believe in. Another entry, this one from 6 months ago. Visual anomaly observed during the jump to Kepler 186f. Duration, approximately 5 seconds. Description, object of unknown origin and composition. Geometric configuration, observed against the void backdrop. Estimated size exceeding current ship classification limits based on visual assessment. No corresponding sensor readings registered. Further analysis required. I remember that moment vividly. A fleeting glimpse, a distortion at the edge of my vision. Or was it? The image is burned into my memory, a stark, angular silhouette against the swirling colors of the void. An object, or a construct maybe, with sharp, defined edges and facets that seemed to interlock in a way that made my head spin. It was too large, far larger than any known ship. Even the massive Titan-class haulers were dwarfed by this thing. Its sheer scale, based on its apparent distance and my rough, on-the-spot triangulation, was staggering. It must have been the size of a small moon. No propulsion, no lights, no discernible features beyond its stark geometry. It didn't reflect any light. It just hung there, a silent black monolith against the void's faint, distorted starscape. My eyes insisted it was there, but my instruments, sensors, scanners all said otherwise. Nothing. Empty space. And then, it was gone. A glitch in the matrix, maybe. Or something else entirely. The AI's voice interrupts my thoughts. Diagnostic complete, Captain Harrow. No anomalies detected in the long-range array. All systems functioning within normal parameters. As expected, I mutter. Maintain continuous passive scans, I order. Log any unusual readings, no matter how minor. Affirmative, Captain Harrow. I close my P-log, staring out at the swirling, distorted view of the void. It's beautiful in its own way. A terrifying, awe-inspiring beauty. A beauty that can drive you mad if you're not careful. I close my eyes for a moment, trying to clear my head, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that always accompanies a jump. But the images from my P-log linger. The strange energy signatures, the structure, the feeling of being watched. The void is full of secrets, and I'm starting to suspect that some of those secrets are best left buried. But the pull is there, the lure of the unknown, the desire to understand. It's a dangerous game, this dance with the void, but it's the only game in town. And I'm all in. Always have been, always will be. A navigator until the end. Or until the void claims me. Whichever comes first. The jump to Haven's Rest was uneventful. A small mercy. The terminus reverted to normal space with its usual groan, the familiar lurch that always made my stomach clench. The transition, for me, was always the worst part. That feeling of your insides being rearranged, your senses rebelling against the shift. It's a feeling you never quite get used to, no matter how many jumps you've made. But it's over quickly, and then you're back in real space, or as real as space gets out here on the fringes. Ahead, Haven's Rest was a tiny speck against the backdrop of a distant nebula, a cluster of lights clinging to a barely habitable rock. Home, for a few days at least. A temporary refuge from the void's crushing emptiness. A place to pretend you're still human, before the black calls you back. I initiated the docking sequence, the AI guiding the terminus through the approach vector. The station's docking lights blinked, a silent welcome. Haven's Rest was an independent operation, a loose confederation of entrepreneurs, ex-corporate types, and void runners looking for a place outside the corporation's long reach. The terminus docked with a gentle thud, the magnetic clamps engaging. I powered down the main systems, the silence of the ship settling in like an old friend. It was a different kind of silence than the void's. A silence filled with the creaks and groans of the station, the distant noise of machinery, the murmur of voices. Life. I grabbed my duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and headed for the airlock. The scent of coffee hit me as I stepped onto the station. Haven's Rest wasn't pretty, but it was functional. A network of corridors, lined with cargo containers, workshops, and living quarters, all crammed into a hollowed-out asteroid. The central hub was a common area, a dimly lit space with a few scattered tables and chairs, a bar, and a panoramic viewport that offered a breathtaking view of the nebula. A handful of navigators and station workers were gathered there, nursing drinks, talking in low voices, or simply staring out at the swirling colors of the cosmos. The Cantina, the Void's Edge, was at the far end of the hub. It was run by an old spacer named Jeb, a man who'd seen more of the Void than most and had the scars to prove it. He was a permanent fixture at the Rest, a confidant, a bartender, a keeper of stories, a repository of Void lore. I made my way to the bar, the scent of cheap liquor and stale synthale washing over me. Jeb, polishing a glass with a rag, nodded in greeting. "Atlas," he said, his voice raspy from years of breathing recycled air. "Back again. The usual." "You know it," I replied, taking a seat at the bar. The usual was a shot of something amber and strong, followed by a mug of the station's recycled coffee. It wasn't good, but it was hot and wet, and it helped to take the edge off. Jeb poured the shot, slid it across the bar, and then filled a mug with steaming black liquid. "Long haul?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Routine," I said. "Cargo run to the outer rim, nothing special." I knocked back the shot, the fiery liquid burning a path down my throat. A familiar sensation, a reminder that I was still alive. "Heard there was some trouble near the Hades system," Jeb said, his eyes narrowed. "Lost a ship, a Titan class. Corporations keeping it quiet, as usual." "They always do," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. "They don't want to spook the investors." I knew about the lost ship. It was hard not to hear the rumors, even out here on the edge of nowhere. Another ghost ship, another crew swallowed by the void. "They say it was a drive malfunction," Jeb continued, lowering his voice. "But I heard things. Rumors." He paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "They say the crew saw something before they went dark. Something big. Something not natural." I raised an eyebrow. "You putting stock in those stories, Jeb?" "I've seen enough in the void to know that anything's possible," he said, his focus drifting towards the viewport. "Things out there, things we can't explain." Just then a younger pilot, barely old enough to shave, swaggered up to the bar. Corvus, if I remembered correctly. Eager, ambitious, full of that naive bravado that hadn't yet been beaten out of him by the void. He was one of those void runner types, all flash and no substance. He wore a custom flight suit, adorned with patches and insignia from various expeditions, most of which I suspected he hadn't actually been on. "Jeb, old man!" Corvus exclaimed, clapping the older man on the shoulder a little too hard. "Set me up with a void dancer and make it a double. I'm celebrating." Jeb sighed, but he poured the drink, a concoction of various liquors that glowed a shade of blue. "Celebrating what, Corvus?" "Just closed a deal to run a high-priority shipment to the Perseus arm," Corvus said, puffing out his chest. "Big payout. This is my ticket to the big leagues, boys." "Perseus arm, huh?" I said, taking another sip of my coffee. "That's a long haul. You sure you're ready for that?" Corvus scoffed. "Ready? I was born ready. I've got the fastest ship on the rest, and I'm not afraid of a little dark. Besides," he added with a wink, "I hear the void entities are particularly active out that way. Might even catch a glimpse of one myself." Jeb snorted. "You keep chasing those phantoms, boy, and you'll end up as another ghost ship." "They're not phantoms," Corvus insisted, taking a large gulp of his drink. "They're real, and I'm going to be the one to prove it." Just then, a quieter, more reserved pilot approached the bar. He was older than Corvus, younger than me, with a thoughtful expression and eyes that seemed to hold a deep understanding of the void's mysteries. Greer. We'd crossed paths a few times before, usually at outposts like this. He was a loner like me, but there was a quiet intensity about him, a sense that he'd seen things, experienced things that most pilots wouldn't even dream of. He nodded to me, a silent greeting, and then turned to Jeb. "Just a synth ale, Jeb," he said, his voice soft but firm. Jeb poured the drink and Greer took a seat a few stools down from me. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts, the only sounds the low murmur of conversation from the other patrons and the clinking of glasses. After a while I turned to Greer. "You hear about that lost ship near Hades?" I asked. Greer nodded slowly. "Hard not to. Another one for the void." "Jeb here seems to think there's more to it," I said, gesturing towards the bartender. "Something about the crew seeing something before they disappeared." Greer's eyes narrowed slightly. "There's always more to it," he said, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the viewport. "The void doesn't give up its secrets easily." "You believe in those stories then?" I asked. "About the void entities?" Greer took a sip of his synth ale before answering. "I believe that there are things in the void that we don't understand," he said. "Things that defy our current understanding of physics, of reality. Whether they're entities as such or something else entirely, I don't know." He paused, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn datapad. "I've been collecting data," he said, turning the datapad towards me. "Observations, sketches, sensor readings, anything that might shed some light on these phenomena." The datapad's screen displayed a series of images, each one more bizarre than the last. Strange energy signatures, distorted starscapes, and in the center of it all, a detailed sketch of a geometric object, similar to the one I'd glimpsed during my jump to Kepler 186f. It was a complex structure, with sharp angles and interlocking facets, vast in scale and intricately detailed. "I saw something like this," I said, pointing to the sketch, "during a jump a few months back. It was gone before I could get a proper reading, but..." "They're real," Greer said, a hint of conviction in his voice. "And they're not just hallucinations as the corporation would have us believe. They're interacting with our reality, somehow. Leaving traces, however faint." I looked at the sketch again, a sense of unease settling in my stomach. It was one thing to speculate about strange phenomena in the void, another to see them rendered in such detail, to have someone else confirm your own experiences. "What do you think they are?" I asked quietly. Greer shrugged. "I don't know," he said, "but I intend to find out." Leaving Haven's Rest was always a bittersweet affair. The camaraderie of the Cantina, the shared stories, the brief respite from the void's crushing loneliness. It was a fleeting comfort, a reminder of the humanity that still existed beyond the corporate grip, beyond the cold indifference of the stars. But the void called, and a navigator always answers. The terminus drifted away from the station, the lights of Haven's Rest receding into the black. I set the coordinates for my next destination, a mining colony on the fringes of the Tartarus sector, and engaged the void drive. The familiar hum filled the cockpit, a prelude to the jump. My mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Greer, the datapad, the sketch of that structure. It confirmed my own experiences, validated the unsettling feeling that had been growing within me for months. The void wasn't just empty space. There was something else out there, something vast and ancient, something that watched us from the darkness between the stars. I pulled up my P-log, reviewing my own entries, the observations, the anomalous sensor readings. The energy signature I detected during the jump to Hades, the fleeting glimpse of the geometric object near Kepler 186f. Each entry was a piece of the puzzle, a breadcrumb trail leading into the unknown. The jump was smooth, thankfully. The terminus transitioned through the void, the familiar distortions of space-time swirling around me. I focused on the sensor readings, on the routine tasks of navigation, trying to ignore the unease in the pit of my stomach. But the void had a way of seeping into your thoughts, of dredging up memories and fears you thought you'd buried. And then it happened. The ship's sensors registered a sudden, localized distortion in the gravitational field, a warping of space-time that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't violent. There were no alarms, no klaxons, just a subtle bending of the rules, as if the universe had hiccuped. A localized event only a few meters across, directly in front of the ship, like a ripple on the surface of a pond. And within that distortion, I saw it. Not a vision, not a hallucination, but an observation. It was as if a window had opened, a tear in the fabric of reality, offering a glimpse into somewhere else. It wasn't a clear image, but a distorted view, as if seen through a fractured lens. The object was defined by angles that didn't seem to adhere to any logical spatial relationship. Planes appeared to fold into each other at acute angles that, in normal space, would be impossible. These planes intersected and overlapped, yet they never truly connected, creating a sense of depth and volume that was both perplexing and unsettling. It was not a solid form in the traditional sense. It was more akin to an intricate framework, an arrangement of surfaces that hinted at a larger structure without ever fully revealing it. Imagine a skeletal structure of a cube, but with extra faces, extra edges where some of the faces pass through each other. It was like a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional object, giving the impression that it was in a constant state of flux, shifting and reconfiguring, never settling into a fixed form. It was less like a physical structure and more like an idea, a concept made manifest, a mathematical equation given a visual form that my mind struggled to process. It exhibited no recognizable features of a spacecraft, no engines, no windows, no markings, no signs of life. Its surfaces were not reflective. Instead, they absorbed and redistribute light in a non-uniform way, creating an unsettling optical illusion. Some areas appeared darker than they should be, while others emitted an internal luminescence that didn't seem to originate from any specific point. This made the object appear both present and absent at the same time, as if it existed partially outside of my observable reality, its form always slightly out of sync with normal space. The object's structure seemed to be in constant motion, though it was hard to define the nature of this motion. It was not a rotation or a translation, but rather a subtle alteration of its entire geometry, as if its very dimensions were fluid and unstable. With the observation came the awareness. Not a voice, not a message, but a direct transmission of intent, a knowing. It was as if my mind had been momentarily linked to an alien network, a network that existed outside of space and time as I understood them. I felt a sense of profound age, of a consciousness that had existed for eons, observing, learning, evolving. A consciousness that was aware of me, of us, but not in a way that suggested hostility or even curiosity. It was more like the awareness a scientist might have of a specimen under a microscope, a detached, analytical observation. A sense of being studied, categorized, understood, but not engaged with. It was the feeling of being utterly insignificant in the face of something truly vast. The distortion vanished, the window closed, the connection severed. The terminus sailed on, the sensor readings returning to normal, as if nothing had happened. My hands almost automatically moved to the P-Logs interface. I needed to record this, to document every detail, no matter how strange, how seemingly impossible. This was not a fleeting hallucination to be dismissed, but an observation, an encounter that needed to be meticulously documented. I initiated a new log entry, my voice slightly shaky as I began the verbal record. Log entry, date 374.22, time 0317, location mid-jump, Tartarus sector, experienced localized gravitational distortion, duration approximately 8 seconds, nature unknown, ship's sensors detected no other associated anomalies. The rest of the jump was a silent affair. I completed the necessary tasks, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying the event, analyzing the data, trying to make sense of what I had witnessed. When the terminus finally emerged near the mining colony, the sight of the mundane structures brought a strange sense of detachment. The colony, with its predictable routines and earthbound concerns, seemed a world away from the mysteries I had glimpsed in the void. The mining colony was a scar on the surface of a barren rock, a symbol of humanity's expansion, even into the most inhospitable corners of the galaxy. It was a place of dust and noise, of grinding machinery and weary workers, a far cry from the silent mysteries of the void. But it was a job, and a job meant credits, and credits meant another day, another jump, another chance to stare into the abyss and wonder what was staring back. I completed the cargo transfer, the automated systems of the terminus interfacing with the colony's network, the exchange of goods, a silent transaction between machines. It was a routine I'd performed countless times before, yet this time it felt different. The encounter in the void had cast a shadow, making the mundane realities of my job seem insignificant, almost absurd. I tried to focus on the tasks at hand, to lose myself in the rhythm of work, but my mind kept returning to the image of the structure, the feeling of that alien presence. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch, a question that demanded an answer. As I supervised the unloading, I noticed an older miner watching me, his face etched with the weariness of years spent toiling under an artificial sun. He was a veteran of the deep, one of the old-timers who'd seen it all, or so they claimed. There was a knowing look in his eyes, a hint of something that went beyond the usual cynicism of a colony worker. His name tag read Elder. Later, during a break, I found him sitting alone in the colony's mess hall, nursing a cup of synth coffee. I took a seat across from him, nodding in greeting. "You're a navigator, aren't you?" he asked, his voice rough but not unkind. "That's right," I replied. "Seen a lot of the void, then?" "Enough," I said. He studied me for a moment, his eyes piercing. "Seen things, maybe? Things you can't explain." I hesitated, unsure if I should confide in this stranger, but there was something in his eyes, a spark of understanding that made me take a chance. "Maybe," I admitted. "Things out of the ordinary." "The void changes you," he said, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "It shows you things, whether you want to see them or not." I told him about my experiences, the fleeting glimpses of the geometric object, and the encounter during my last jump. I described the distortion, the impossible structure, the feeling of being observed by something vast and ancient. He listened patiently without interrupting, his expression tight and closed off. When I was finished, he simply nodded, as if I had confirmed something he already knew. "They're out there," he said. "The old-timers we've always known. We see them sometimes on the long hauls, glimpses of things that shouldn't be there. The corporation calls them hallucinations, glitches in the sensors. But they're wrong." "What are they?" I asked, the question that had been burning in my mind for months. He shrugged. "Nobody knows for sure. Some say they're ancient machines, left behind by a long-dead civilization. Others say they're something beyond our understanding, something alive maybe, but not like us. Have you ever communicated with them? I asked hesitantly. He looked at me, a hint of something in his eyes. They communicate, he said, but not in a way we understand. Not with words. It's more like a feeling, a presence, a knowing. He paused, then added, they're not hostile, not that I can tell, but they're watching us, studying us, and I don't think they're done yet. His words resonated with my own experience, the sense of being observed, analyzed. It was a chilling thought, but also strangely exhilarating. To know that we were not alone in the universe, that there were other intelligences out there, even if they were beyond our grasp. Before I could leave the colony, I received a message. It was from Greer. Atlas, I think I've found something. Coordinates attached. A region of space where these phenomena are more frequent. I'm going to investigate. Meet me there if you're interested. Greer. The coordinates were for a sector on the edge of explored space, a region known for its instability, its gravitational anomalies. It was a risky proposition, venturing into uncharted territory, far from the established trade routes, but the lure of the unknown was too strong to resist. This was a chance to learn more, to gather more data, to perhaps even encounter the entities again, under more controlled circumstances, and maybe to begin to understand their purpose. I made a decision that went against every protocol, every regulation, every instinct for self-preservation. I altered the Terminus's flight plan, setting a course for the coordinates Greer had provided. It was a detour, a deviation from my assigned route, a risk that could cost me my job, maybe even my life. But some questions are worth the risk. Some mysteries demand to be explored. As the Terminus prepared for the jump, I felt a sense of anticipation, of excitement, mixed with a healthy dose of fear. I was heading into the unknown, chasing shadows, pursuing a mystery that might never be solved. But I was not alone. Greer would be there, and perhaps others, drawn by the same unseen force, the same desire to understand the secrets of the void. I initiated the jump sequence, the hum of the void drive filling the cockpit. The Terminus lurched, the stars outside the viewport blurring into streaks of light. I was leaving the familiar behind, venturing into the darkness towards a destination unknown. But as I stared into the swirling colors of the void, I knew that I was on the right path. The path to discovery, the path to understanding, the path to the truth, whatever that might be. The void awaited, full of its silent promises and hidden dangers. And I, Atlas Harrow, Void Navigator, was ready to face them, to seek out the echoes of the unknown and to chart a new course beyond the familiar, beyond the known, beyond the edge of everything.